you had told me 10, 15 years ago that I would be speaking to you as an inventor and entrepreneur, I would have said, not a chance, you don't know me. I'm going to go out of the newsroom feet first. That's one of the fun things about growing older, though, is life surprises you. I kind of stumbled into being an inventor. I call myself the accidental entrepreneur. And essentially, it's because when I started in television in the 1980s, some of you will remember some of what I'm going to talk about. When I started in television in Toronto, actually, I wrote my news stories on manual typewriters. We had reel-to-reel recording machines for our voice tracks for TV. We used 3/4-inch videotape cameras that were so big they required 2 people to carry them, and they weighed, they were so heavy it was really, really hard to work with them. So fast forward 30 years later, and we all know what's happened to that media technology. We've witnessed in our lifetimes this incredible revolution. The typewriter, I mean, you know, I talk to the younger employees in my company, and they look at me like I'm a dinosaur, and they think manual typewriters, and what are they? I can see some people smiling. You remember manual typewriters. I mean, it's not that long ago. I remember when the IBM Selectric came in. I don't know, who remembers the IBM Selectric with its bouncing balls? I thought that was the height of modernity. Of course, we now have laptops, we have digital recorders, and we of course have the internet and video compression. It is a completely changed landscape. Everything I did, and those of you who worked in some form of media in the 1980s, whether you were creating ads or working in marketing or doing interviews, all of that is ancient history, except for one part of the process. And that's how we get the content out of our audio and video. When I was a young reporter, I used to carry a little mini cassette recorder, and I would record my interviews because I was on deadline. And I would rewind it, and in the vehicle going back to the station or to our newsroom, I'd rewind it and I'd hit play and I'd hit stop, and in my notebook I'd scribble out the quotes. Fast forward 30 years later, and all that technology I just talked about, it's all ancient history. So is my mini cassette recorder, because now I use my iPhone. And I still have to hit play and hit stop and write it out or type it out. And what's changed, 2 big things have changed though in the media landscape. One is there are more platforms demanding that content fast. In the early days, in my early days, I reported for TV. I did a story that was 2.5 minutes. It was gone. Now, in my last job as ABC News London correspondent, when I was traveling the world as a foreign correspondent and war correspondent, if I had a good interview, social media wanted it, Twitter and Facebook wanted it with captions. Our radio service, ABC News Radio, which goes across the US and around the world, wanted it. Online wanted a digital story. Podcasting now would want it. Of course, our main news programs at ABC, Good Morning America, World News Tonight, would want it. And they don't want the same content. And the answer would be, hey, somebody has to transcribe it. You've got to wait. I've got to find the moments. And I'm sure in your jobs you're aware of this workflow. That's a huge challenge in a world that is more and more video. Cisco says that 84% of the content on the internet today is recorded video. It's not searchable. We have a problem. We're creating vast archives of what's called dark data. Data that you can't actually access. If you were recording this, my little talk here, and if some of you thought there was actually something of value in it, and you wanted to access it, and Marco posted it on the website of this conference, you wouldn't be able to find the reference to, say, hypothetically to ABC News without listening to it. That's hugely inefficient, and it's costing us time and money. The other thing, by the way, that's changed in the landscape in all industries is that we're being asked to do more with fewer resources, fewer people. Certainly in the media where I work, that's true, but I think that's true in every industry. At the same time, I recognize that Automated speech is getting better and better. We watched as Siri came in, 5-6 years ago. It wasn't very good on the iPhone. Now it's better. Now it's quite amazing. We've got Amazon Alexa. We've got Google Home. Just yesterday, Amazon introduced a new speech-to-text algorithm. All of this says that what I'm doing now, talking, can now be made searchable in some form. The problem is that if I use some exotic place name, or if somebody interrupts, or if I cough, that automated speech is still going to get it wrong. It's really good data, but it's flawed data. And for you and for me, that's not good enough. And that's why my team and I set out to build Trint. Trint, by the way, is a word that we invented for transcription and interview. And when investors ask us where we want the company to be in 4 or 5 years, my answer is in the dictionary. I want people to use it as a noun and a verb. What we did at Trint was to find a way to perfect the content, the output of automated speech to text. I was showing an example of President Trump speaking the other day, and he swallowed one of his words. He actually comes out really well in automated speech to text. He speaks slowly, and he only has a vocabulary of words with 2 syllables, so it's really easy for him. He actually swallowed the word, he said incredible, but it came out credible. And so the speech engine said, I think it's credible that he said that. Well, of course, he actually said, when you listen to it, incredible. Well, that's a really serious error. If I put that on my newscast or on your website, you'd fire me, and quite rightly. That's an unacceptable error. We need to make sure our quotes are accurate. That's the problem with automated speech. I'm not going to show you my product right now because I want to talk more generally about the landscape that I work in. But the thing about Trint is that because what we were able to do is put a platform of software on top of automated speech that tethers the text to the source audio. So you can follow it like karaoke, and you can edit it if there's an error. As we like to say, Trint does the heavy lifting. You can polish it to perfect in reducing hours of work to minutes. The whole concept is that we need to find a way to make recorded talk, audio, video, searchable. That's what Trint is. I want to talk to you just a little bit, though, about the lessons for me as an innovator. I came into this as a complete naive in the sense that I'd never run a business. I'd never actually thought of running a business, and yet I met a couple of developers at a conference. I was asked to set up a global journalism program in London for American and Canadian students by an American university, and in researching it, I met a couple of developers who'd done an experiment with transcription, with manual transcription, tethering the output of automated speech to the text on the screen. And I said, wow, I didn't know you could do this. Could you put automated speech rather than manual speech into this and find a way to correct it? Because if you could change the world. People have no patience. We've all been to websites where you press a button and it takes you somewhere and you don't know what to do and you give up. That's what you call UX, user experience, and that's bad UX. Good UX, which we strive for, means you never have to look at the help pages. It is so intuitive, it is so easy that you can just go to it for the first time and it works. You may not know all the little secret bells and whistles, but you can get 60% of the function, the core function, to work. And getting a product from an idea or even a prototype getting a concept from an idea to a prototype to a product is a really tough journey. And it requires not just good engineers, and it does require good engineers, but it requires an incredibly deep understanding of the problem you're trying to solve. Where I come to this is what's called politely a late-stage entrepreneur, is that I've lived the problem that I'm solving. I spent 30 years and thousands of hours of my life transcribing interviews. It was sort of the curse of having let my interviews go too long. I'm a slightly curious person, and so sometimes I ask more questions than I need to. And the purgatory is sitting in a room having to transcribe them or having colleagues. I was fortunate enough to have a number of colleagues do it who would curse me rather than me cursing myself. But I always wondered, or often wondered as technology advanced, why do we have to do this? And so what I'm able to do, I didn't try to solve the taxi industry. I don't know anything about taxis, but I did try to solve a workflow that I know intimately and that gives me a vision and I must say a credibility that has helped us gain access to market, raise a lot of money, and attract some extraordinary talent to our team. So if you have an idea, that's great. I would say ask yourself this tough question. Does it actually have a business plan that makes it viable? Because so many people will say, I've got this idea for unscrewing light bulbs, but who's actually going to pay you? And if they're going to pay you, will they pay you more than once? Will they find a gimmick that they use once because it's kind of cool and never come back? Is there a sustainable business model? And that's really the challenge that I've had to learn on the fly. Trint is 3 years old tomorrow. We began actually in an Airbnb in Florence because one of our developers who has children lived just outside of Florence, so we all said, oh heck, we'll just come to Florence. So we spent weeks in an Airbnb in Florence in December of 2014, 4 of us, me and 3 developers, mapping out what Trint would be. And to be honest, we've made a huge number of mistakes. We all make mistakes in life. I think when you run a startup for the first time, you make more than your share of mistakes. The thing is to not tear yourself apart over them, it's to learn and just move on. It takes an extraordinary tenacity to do it, and the best days are often followed by the worst moments of angst and fear. It's an incredibly exciting journey. I would just say to you, finally, that in learning about how to make content accessible, in trying to disrupt a world that has existed for 40, 50 years, this world of recordings that aren't searchable, I have three takeaways for as a first-time entrepreneur that I would leave you with. One is that it's far more creative than I would have imagined. In my reporting as a war correspondent, as a domestic correspondent, as a foreign correspondent, did a fair amount of business reporting. I reported for more than 40 countries for ABC News, CBS News, and the CBC in Canada in my 30-year career. I never really appreciated how creative business could be, and I think all of you understand that. I would also say that it's a lot more fun than I expected. People ask me, do you miss all your exotic travels? I'm loving this. It's really great. I have no idea what next year will bring, but it's incredibly exciting to be inventing. And finally, I would say it is much harder than I ever expected. I'm 3 years in, and I like to say that when I decided to climb this mountain, I had no idea that going up beyond the clouds, it was called Everest. The air gets very thin as you succeed and you get up higher. And you see new products come out, new competitors come out, and you think, oh, can we keep going? And you just do. Anyway, that's Trint. Please do give us a try. I'm going to be brazen and promote my product. But thank you all very much for your time. It's a real pleasure.